apparently it's not good enough to just ride around in a Rentley. You also need to lease a private plane. Welcome back to Wine and Chill. I'm Stephanie, your favorite recovering lawyer, and today we're talking about Simon, the alleged scammer. Not so alleged because, as discussed on Patreon as well as Grace's channel, there are some convictions from the 80s and the 90s, and now we're into the 2020s, and there is a new lawsuit. We're going to go through the complaint as well as the contracts listed as exhibits in the complaint. Well, what we can see of those contracts, because interestingly enough, a lot of those contracts are redacted. So we'll get into that and maybe possible reasons as to why they are redacted, and a little bit to touch on Portia and her recent divorce filing, a little bit of the downsides of hypergamy. Hypergamy gone wrong. Because do you know how upset I would be if I seduced and schemed just to find out that I am being seduced and schemed? Livid. That's why, in the words of my grandma, your grandma, and any grandma with sense, you always need vex money. So let's get into it. Here is our complaint. And this complaint specifically is by essentially a very expensive private jet service where you can perpetrate the fool and pretend that you are indeed the owner of a private plane. And instead, it's more so like a ride share, carpooling, or you know what, truthfully, Uber. So we have NetJet Sales, NetJet Aviation Inc., NetJet Services Inc. These are the different subsidiaries of NetJet. We'll get NetJets. We'll specifically get into what they do in a minute, versus Simcoe Petroleum Limited Company LLC in the care of Simon Guobadia. Now, we have two counts: breach of the release agreement, which we're going to get into that release agreement, and breach of the program agreement. As you see for count 2, the breach of program agreement pled in the alternative. This is because the breach of the release agreement encompasses the breach of the program agreement. Because Simon defaulted on his payments, he then entered into the second agreement. So they are listing the initial program just in case the judge is like, you know what, let's throw this second agreement out and go with the first one. All right. If you missed it, over on Grace Report, her channel, we did a deep dive into Simon's deportation cases, multiple.
And Wine and Chill is absolutely incredible. She is always so thorough with her work, as you're about to see in this video. So please do make sure to subscribe to her channel.
Thank you, Grace. I appreciate you. All right, so let's go back before either of us were born to 1982. So I'm just going to read a few, about 4 paragraphs quickly so we can familiarize ourselves with Simon's very interesting past. Petitioner, so that's Simon, he's the petitioner, because at this point, just to speed us up to 2024, he actually went and petitioned the U.S. government saying, hey, I am owed U.S. citizenship. So he has essentially told himself, which is quite fascinating. So he is the petitioner. Petitioner is a Nigerian citizen. Petitioner first entered the United States on August 11th, 1982. However, he overstayed his visitor visa, and in 1985, INS denied his application for adjustment of status. He was declared deportable and voluntarily departed from the United States on December 28th, 1985. So no, December 28th, 1985, in your mind as the forced deportation, which was voluntary. He said, okay, you know what, y'all are right. I did overstay my visa. I'll be back. He then re-entered the United States in June 1986, a little less than a year later. Petitioner again overstayed his 6-month visitor visa. In September 1987, petitioner was arrested for bank and credit card fraud and pleaded guilty to a felony offense. It should be noted, when you're on a visitor visa, you're also not allowed to work, which is a whole nother offense that's not listed in here right now. He was arrested in January 1989 for unauthorized use of a vehicle, and again in 1990 for fraud. Thereafter, the agency began removal proceedings. In January of 1991, petitioner committed another felony offense, credit card fraud. In April 1991, an immigration judge held a hearing and ordered petitioner to be deported. So this will be the second deportation. On March 4th, 1992, petitioner was deported and physically removed from the United States. So that was involuntary. It should be noted also, in 1985, he went to adjust the status of his application. He based his 1985 application to the United States on a marriage which the agency, the governmental agency, deemed a sham marriage because of statements by his alleged spouse that the two of them had not resided together and the marriage was never consummated. So essentially, he got married for papers at one point, according to the court. So then in 1992, the interesting thing was while he was deported, he filed paperwork before his deportation. So before his 1992 removal on October 4th, 1988, 4 years prior, Simon used a different identity to seek temporary resident status under the Special Agricultural Worker Program, which should be noted. He has never been an agricultural worker in the United States. He also did not include his criminal history on his SAW application. When his SAW application was approved with the misrepresentations and omissions, he was given a registration card as a temporary resident on July 25th, 1991. And as part of his SAW immigration benefits, Simon's temporary resident status was automatically converted to permanent resident status following the waiting period. Simon then received his permanent residency card on April 27th, 1992, 26 days after he had been deported under his other undisclosed identity. So that is the background, which we can discuss before we get into the present day.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for this rundown, because it's crazy to me, because this is the question that I have. How does someone with a history like this have the balls to demand citizenship? Is it not too risky of a thing? Because I feel like, being the scaredy cat that I am, permanent residency would have been good enough for me, you know, like, yeah, you don't get to vote or whatever, but you're permanently there. Maybe they're not going to look into you like that anymore. The way that they look into you hardcore when you go for citizenship.
Yeah. I think, honestly, to be honest, I was trying to figure out what would motivate somebody to jeopardize their permanent residency status. So permanent residency status is, I would say, like a very sought after status as an immigrant in the United States, because usually you have to get permanent residency before you can do naturalization. So naturalization is where you become a citizen. Most of my family has done it. I was born here. So then if you're born in the country, you automatically have citizenship. And then there are exceptions for people born on U.S. military bases abroad. So one of the things that I think, because Simon has portrayed himself as this very wealthy, worldly, international businessman, it is unfortunately, due to colonization, xenophobia, and other things, very hard sometimes to travel around with a Nigerian passport. So you will get flagged because of that. Now, Simon might have been like, oh, if I become a citizen, nobody questions you when you have a U.S. passport. Should they? Maybe. But they don't. You can breeze through any security that you want. It's also visa free when you go to visit certain countries. Do you know how bold you have to be like, you know what? I know my paperwork is funny, but I'm here to make some money. So come join us over there if you want a full breakdown of the deportation cases and why that man would decide that getting a blue passport is so important to him that he would put his 20, almost 30 years of getting away with this into jeopardy. Couldn't be me. Let's get into the case at hand. So, background facts. Plaintiffs operate a fractional aircraft program, the NetJets fractional program. NetJets Sales engages in the business of selling and leasing fractional interest in the private jets in the NetJets fractional program. NetJets Aviation provides aircraft management and support services such as flight planning, provisions of crew members, and maintenance for the individuals and entities that purchase or lease an interest in the program aircraft from NetJets Sales. These individuals and entities are referred to as owners. NetJets Services provides administrative services for said owners. There's a certain level of delusion, but they said, listen, these faux rich people want to feel like they actually have some money. So let's tell them that, we know you are leasing a fractional share of this shared minivan in the sky, and you, friend, can be an owner too. This is why when people say act your wage, it's things like this. It's things like this. There is nothing wrong with flying economy. It's good for the environment, to fly commercial. It's better for you if you have any type of flight anxiety. Small planes are terrifying. They have very bad turbulence. If you've ever gone on a regional flight in the United States, the smaller the plane, the more turbulent it is. And now that we have, unfortunately, planes with, whole entire size of them flying into the air, I would much rather be on a large commercial plane. So, according to the complaint, on or about August 21st, 2020, defendant entered into a NetJets fractional program agreement, the program agreement, with plaintiffs, whereby defendant agreed to lease a 12.5% interest in a Cessna Citation aircraft. A copy of the program agreement with redactions for confidentiality purposes is attached hereto as Exhibit A. We will be going over Exhibit A in a minute. Subsequent to the filing of this complaint, plaintiffs will seek to file an unredacted version of the program agreement under seal. And we'll talk about why they would want to file under seal without our prying, moneyed eyes. On or about July 3rd, 2021, defendant agreed to increase its lease to 15.625% interest in the Cessna Citation aircraft. Defendant then breached the terms of the program agreement by failing to timely pay to plaintiffs all amounts due under the program agreement, and plaintiffs terminated the program agreement under its terms on or about February 28th, 2023. These unpaid amounts include, without limitation, monthly management fees, monthly lease fees, occupied hourly fees, hourly fuel fees, because again, you are paying a percentage since you want to be a faux owner of a small fraction of a small airplane in the sky. You got to pay for the gas because this is carpooling. Let's get into the agreement for a moment. What we can see of it, because it is heavily redacted. This is the fractional program agreement. So as you can see here, the quote unquote owner, aka the person leasing the plane, is Simon's company, Simcoe Petroleum Limited Company LLC, owner's principal contact, Simon Guobadia, the sales, etc., the type of plane that he would be leasing, and the amount, August 20th, 2020. As you can see, the monthly lease fee, they redacted, the monthly management fee, they redacted. All of that they have redacted, likely because different corporations, as well as different private individuals that are leasing these planes, they are likely negotiating their rates. So if I'm leasing the plane for, child, how much does a private plane go for these days? $10,000 an hour, but somebody, Coca-Cola is also leasing a plane for their executives, and they have access to better lawyers, and they get to lease their plane for $8,000. That's why the company likely has that redacted, because they don't want me to know that I'm getting bamboozled out of $2,000. So as we go down, you see that Simon has signed it. There goes his good old John Hancock signature right there. You can see rules about scheduling your flight. Most of it, again, is redacted. I would assume that that is for proprietary reasons, that the private jet company does not want their competitors to know how they go about scheduling the flights, etc. Maybe somebody else has better terms, or maybe these terms were negotiated. So after 3 years, when Simon allegedly, according to the company, did not pay the plaintiff, the company decided to sue him in the amount of $974,213.11 for a plane that he did not own, that he was leasing, but not leasing the entirety of the plane, just leasing a fractional share of the plane. The mental gymnastics and the hoops that people will jump through just to prove that they maybe have a little bit of money, when all they had to do was just, calm themselves, is never not going to be fascinating to me. Because imagine being on the hook for $1 million for something that you do not own, that you leased, and you didn't even get to lease the entirety of the actual mode of transportation. So after trying to collect the debt from Simon and the private jet company then entered into a confidential release agreement and payment plan. You're on a payment plan for a jet that you cannot afford, while you're simultaneously vacationing in Dubai, and now, according to Instagram, as of yesterday, in Costa Rica. I wonder how much the rental was on that military suit for a man that never was in the military. I mean, he could have put that towards his payment. So he got a little bit of a discount on the money he owed under the release agreement. So he was now, under the release agreement, was supposed to pay $839,296.11 in monthly installments with interest. So with the interest, it probably would have grown to the entirety of the amount. He had 34 months to make said payments. All right, which gives you a couple years to pay off your very large debt. As you can see here, the confidential settlement and release agreement, here is Simon's signature again, stating, yes, I'm going to pay this money that I allegedly didn't pay the first time, but this time I'm really going to pay it. So let's look at the confidential release agreement. Okay, confidential settlement and release agreement. Here you have the statement of who the parties are from 2023, August 2023. Then you have a large text that's redacted. Now, therefore, in consideration of the mutual promises, covenants, terms, and conditions contained in the settlement agreement, the party agree as follows: redacted, redacted, and redacted, which is why they then included in their complaint that they would like to file the full version unredacted under seal. And this, I think, is the really interesting part. And this is what triggered this lawsuit in this instance. In the settlement agreement that we can see, the unredacted small part, it states in subsection C, in the event that a party or released party institutes any legal suit, action, or proceedings against another party or released party arising out of or relating to the settlement agreement, the prevailing party, so whoever wins in court, or released party in the suit, action, or proceeding shall be entitled to receive from any non-prevailing party, aka the loser, in addition to all other damages to which it may be entitled, so aka that $830,000 that you owe us, run the money, the cost incurred by such prevailing party, aka the lawyer's fees. Lawyers are, cost a cute penny. In conducting the suit, action, or proceeding, including reasonable attorney's fees and expenses and court costs. Most likely, they are going to prevail against Simon in this action unless by a magical miracle, he can show that he paid the amount and their bookkeeping is funny. So one of the interesting things in the release agreement that's stated is pursuant to section 2B of the release agreement, defendant's failure to pay any installment by the due date set forth on the remittance schedule, which the schedule is one of the redacted sections, plus a 3 business day grace period, created a material breach of the release agreement. Defendant's failure to pay any installment by the due date set forth on the schedule plus a 3 business day grace period caused the remaining balance of the release payment to become due and payable immediately. AKA, you miss your payment. We're done talking to you. We're done calling you. We're done maybe calling your home, maybe calling Portia's phone. We are done doing this. It becomes due. And the minute you don't pay it, we are counting 3 business days. And then you're getting this lawsuit, which is what they proceeded to do. This type of language in contracts is super important because you always want to give a timeline that is enforceable. So then, unfortunately, if you have to deal with a raggedy client, you could just go to the courthouse, to small claims court, to federal court, or to the county courthouse, depending on the amount and depending what the venue is that you'd like to sue in. Now, to Simon's one small credit, according to the complaint, he did make a payment. 1. Defendant timely made the first installment of $25,000 due under the remittance schedule on September 1st, 2023, reducing the balance of the release payment to $814,296.11. Defendant failed to pay the second installment shown on the remittance schedule by the due date of October 1st, 2023, or within 3 business day grace period extending to October 4th, 2023. As of the filing of this complaint, defendant has failed to make any payments to plaintiffs beyond the first installment of September 1st, 2023. We are now in the year 2024. Do you know how bold you have to be to owe somebody nearly $1 million and then be on a reality TV show showing off your new, beautiful, young, and should pay better attention wife in her nice lifestyle, in her expensive coats, in her expensive home, and her expensive trips to Dubai, being his peace, not his problem, while he is indeed the problem? This level of audacity really needs to be studied. Because if I couldn't even imagine owing somebody that much money. If I owe somebody money, the last thing I'm going to do is be like, hey, look at these new earrings I just bought. Aren't they cute? They are cute. I'm not saying anything. Also, I don't like owing people money, so I pay my things. Which now is a great time to segue for a quick moment. If you haven't already, please go ahead and like and subscribe and comment and let me know, what do you think is going to unfold between Simon, this case? Likely he's going to have other cases I'm going to get into in a second. A bunch of his LLCs. It's not an exhaustive list in the state of Georgia. And his immigration case. What are your thoughts around that? All right, so I decided to do a light perusal into the Georgia Corporations Division and see, okay, we're using the name SimCall. How many companies did Simon and his associates start under various, SimCall expressions? So we have SimCall Distribution LLC, Dissolved, no longer exists. Simcol Entertainment Group LLC. Very interesting. I see Fallon is there. Fallene. Is her name spelled wrong? Her name is definitely spelled wrong, which is super interesting. So one of the interesting it's us realizing this live. So when I initially looked at this, I was like, oh wow, Fallon's name is listed here under Simcol Entertainment Group LLC. One of the super interesting things, that says Fallene, F-A-L-I-N-E. That's not how Fallon's name is spelled. Her name is F-A-L-Y-N-N. Questions? All right. And as you can see here, Simcol Group LLC, Simcol Investment Group, Simcol Lifestyle Inc. As some of them are dissolved, some of them are active and compliant. It just depends on whether or not he's paying the registration fees, which is really interesting in that how would you, it's not impossible, but it's improbable for you to have a petroleum company. Again, oil and gas is a very specific regulated industry. And also to have an investment company, a lifestyle company, and an entertainment company. Jeff Bezos has nothing on Simon Guobadia. And last but not least, listed here under one of his companies, I thought it was really interesting that yes, he is the lover and the secretary and the CEO and the CFO. I mean, the chief financial officer, when you are accused of alleged funny money, yeah, all right. Sure. I would guess that we are going to see a lot of Simon in all of his many, many companies. So I'm sure he has companies registered outside of the state. I would guess that he has companies registered outside of the state of Georgia. It is going to be interesting to see how this plays out, who pops up as creditors, people he is owing money to, and what simultaneously goes on with his divorce, as Portia is now divorcing him because she has now realized, A, that his money is funny, or she has realized that everyone else has realized that his money is funny. Yeah. So I want to leave y'all with this. Sprinkling your way into a scam or sham is a sure way to give yourself high blood pressure. I think it's really fascinating as we're currently going on, and I've done a few videos on hypergamy, the downfalls of hypergamy, why you should always have some vex money. Well, nothing will make you feel better than, finding the love of your life and being able to sleep at night knowing if something happens to them, they get into an accident, you can support yourself, you can support them till death do you part, etc. If that is your jam, that's the route you want to go. I couldn't imagine trying to seduce and scheme my way into a nice life and then realize that I am being seduced and schemed instead. Because it's very obvious that Simon went after Portia because Portia had the media attention, was in the limelight, and he wanted that.
See, you laid it out for us.
This is gorgeous. Yeah, that makes me want to get married all over again.
Maybe she thought that he owned the jet. A little perusal into finances and my financial literacy is always necessary. That would have disabused her of any of those thoughts. Because now additional paperwork and additional lawyers has to be paid. So here are a few videos that I've done before. We have prenups and patriarchies, keeping it in the Real Housewives franchise, Real Housewives and Potomac. We discussed what was going on with Ashley's prenup that she signed and then signed a post-nup and then, girl, yeah, she currently has nothing. And the pros and cons of all of that, as well as Julesy and I on Patreon. Oh, I'm just bringing up this gown, to be honest, because this was a really beautiful gown. Maybe they can sell that gown to make some of these payments. Yes, beautiful gown, truly beautiful, beautiful gown. And then Julesy and I did a video about hypergamy and the downfalls of hypergamy over on Patreon a while back. So if y'all want to check that out, we were having a good time. A good time reviewing all the very interesting advisement on the internet from people who have A, not achieved that for themselves, and B, are really just trying to trick young women into courses. Don't spend your last money on one of these courses, please. Please. And on that note, I appreciate y'all. I will catch y'all in the next video.